Hi. I literally just sat down. I don't know what I'm doing. uh, okay. My mic is on. I think that's all you need. I don't know. Usually I have time, like, in the last, 4 minutes or so, I have time to sit down, and I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm going to say, this is what I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. But, that didn't happen. I took a nap, right before the stream, because I was dead, okay? I was dead. I essentially, didn't eat until 3 hours ago. Because I had to get up, go, essentially just had, protein shakes, and I had to go to work for 4.5 hours, and then go finally, hey Julia, finally go, I had to go right from there to my, appointment at my internet place because I am switching to their phone plan. Finally getting a cheaper phone plan. Yes. Don't have to be a slave of Boost anymore. Thank the Lord. Now that they finally unlocked my phone, that's a whole story if you want to hear that. And then I had to go get groceries right after that. Starving the whole time and just throwing things in my cart that I'll probably regret. And then I came home and I put my clothes away. I put my food away. And I said, you know what? I'm dead. So I ate and then I just passed out for 2 hours. And I woke up and I'm just bleh. So I literally just woke up not that long ago. So I'm not all here. Okay, so, hello. Hello, fellow witches and wizards. My name is PhoenixGinny, and welcome to the stream. Welcome back to Storytime Saturday, where a superfan reads Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Yes, we're reading chapters 3 and 4 today. I didn't stream last weekend, because I was on vacation. Even though I didn't go anywhere. I was supposed to go somewhere, but I didn't end up having enough money, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to take those days off anyway, so yeah. If you watched the stream yesterday, I explained how awful my last weekend was. I essentially was itchy the whole time, because my immune system is, I don't want to say it's garbage. I was about to say my immune system is garbage. It is not garbage. I'm sure it protects me from lots of things. My immune system is overprotective. I have strong allergies to things that I shouldn't have allergies to. Things that are nice and helpful. I enjoy swimming. It's my favorite part of the summer. I swim every chance I get, especially since I discovered that there's a free pool right by my house. So I go every week, but my skin hates chlorine water. So I went to the beach on Friday, and I wore my bathing suit all day. And I had gone to the pool earlier. I'd gone to the pool earlier in the week, and my bathing suit, so my bathing suit hadn't been washed since then, so I still had chlorine water in it, sort of. So I wore it all day at the beach, and then ended up going to the pool after the beach. And so the next day I woke up and my skin was not happy. I broke out everywhere where my bathing suit had touched my skin, essentially on the seams and the ruffles that I have on the bottom, and I was itchy for the whole weekend. I essentially had to, it was really bad. I had to contact a doctor, not my doctor, a doctor, just any doctor. I went to the first online clinic I could go to and set up a virtual appointment, and was first thing in the morning, I was like, I'm itchy, please help me. And they prescribed me something. I essentially got it in took as many as I was able. So, because over-the-counter stuff was not working. My husband hates when I call our staycations vacations, but he also hates the word staycation, lol, but I feel you. You should take time off even if you can't go somewhere. Oh my FG, I'm the same way with chlorine water, and I love swimming. Yeah, and I don't know, something about this pool, they're really finicky about their chlorine. Like, you can smell it the moment you get there. The moment you get in the water, you're just like, oh man. Like, I think they overdo it, honestly. Like, I can only go, like, under the water, like, 2 or 3 times because my eyes are just like, nope, can't do this. But, yeah. But I love swimming, and I do it anyway, and I'm doing it tomorrow. I don't care. Because tomorrow's the last day. Tomorrow's the last day the pool's going to be open, so, for the season. So, I'm going. I don't care. I'm the kind of person that, when I want to do something, I don't let things stop me. Like, I don't care if I have allergies. I'm going to do it, because this life is beautiful and wonderful, and I have a responsibility to enjoy it, honestly. So that's what I'm gonna do. So, so I'm gonna suffer, but it's fine. Like, if I just go swimming for like an hour, come home, take a shower immediately, it's usually not a big deal. I can take a nice large Allegra pill, and it's usually fine. Why am I talking about this? I don't know. Other things, sure. Like the video, like the stream, please. It's helpful. Really want the algorithm to be nice to me. And if you're not subscribed, become a subscriber. I gained some subscribers last night, which is awesome. I would like more, please. I know I'm not uploading nearly as much as I want to. I don't know. My last legitimate upload was months ago. But that's because I have a whole list of things I want to work on, and I only have about an hour every other day to work on YouTube, more or less. And so that's the only time that I have to work on it. And I have all kinds of housekeeping that I do on top of making content. I need to go through my live streams, and I need to edit them down to cut out the intermissions, and I'd like to look into making clips and stuff, and I gotta do that later. I'm also changing the titles of all these videos, because I decided to make them more fun sounding and put like Superfan Reads in the title, and want to put all my links in the... Anyway, you don't care about this. I'm doing a lot of housekeeping on top of trying to make content, and I'm working on this big video that I'm really, really excited about. I'm excited. I'm almost done. I'm in the reviewing stage, but it's really long and a really big project. I've been working on it since May, so it's not like I'm not doing anything. It's just taking a lot of time. So, I plan on posting more stuff soon-ish. But more subscribers would be awesome. And turn on notifications so you can be notified when I go live and when I upload. I don't know what my live stream schedule is going to be like next week. I'll probably be live streaming on Friday. I don't know. I might only do Storytime Saturdays every other Saturday, just because Saturday is the only time I can do stuff with like my family, and I really like... I spent the summer watching Lord of the Rings with my brother, and I really enjoyed that. And I kind of want to keep that going and watching stuff with my brother. But at the same time, I don't know if I'll have enough money for gas to drive all the way there. And then also at the same time, I don't have money for laundry, and so it would be nice to go to my parents' house and do laundry. So I don't know. So I don't know if I'm going to be streaming next Saturday or not, is the short answer to that. Follow me on Twitter. That's where I post my streaming schedule every week. Link in the description. Also in the description is my Instagram and my TikTok, and other stuff. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon. I also have a Patreon. If you want to support me, please, that'd be awesome. I only had $80 for food this week, and I just found out that I have an extra $10 because I saved money from switching to my previous cell phone provider. So Um, but, so, like, it would be really helpful is what I'm trying to say. And also, I'm down to my last quarters of laundry, and I've got nothing left, so I'm going to be washing my clothes and air drying them, and that's going to be fun. What else? Yes, Patreon. Or if you, but if you don't want to just support me, like there's other stuff you can do on Patreon. I am a writer, and so I have short stories and poetry and essays and stuff on Patreon. If you want to check that out, you could read everything and become a patron for $5 a month. Or you can just read the free stuff, because there's free stuff on there too. Yes, you can do free stuff on Patreon. I talked to a friend about it, and she's like, I didn't know you could post free stuff on Patreon. Like, yes, you can. I can. So, if you can't afford that, but you still would like to read the stuff that I've written, there are some free stuff on there. So, check it out. Link in the description. Okay. Now that I've been streaming for, not that long. Thought I've been babbling for 30 minutes, but it's really only been like 10-ish. Almost 15. Okay. Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Last time, previously, on Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, we read chapters 1 and 2. Chapter 1 was the Riddle House, where we had this huge discussion about, I don't know what you want to call it, postscript stuff, the stuff that was changed after the book had been printed, after the book had been released. There's changes between the UK edition and the US edition. I have the US edition, and how the words are different between the different editions and whatnot, and how that changes the meaning of the sentence, and how we don't know what the death and or obstacle was that Voldemort was talking about. And we had a big long discussion about that. We're just going to keep that in the back of our minds, because maybe the answer will come to us later. So the Riddle House, yeah, we have Voldemort talking about his plans with Wormtail. Kind of foggy about what his plans actually are, even though I've read this book. How many times have I read this book? I've read this book 7 times, seen the movie a bajillion times. I still don't have all the pieces together, because Voldemort's plan is really complex, especially in the book. The movie, they simplify it. They cut it way down. It's essentially just Mad-Eye Moody, essentially just Barty Crouch Jr. becomes Mad-Eye Moody and gets Harry to the maze to touch the Portkey and take him to the graveyard. That's essentially the whole plan. But actually, in the book, it's actually way more complicated than that. And I don't remember most of the pieces, because this book is huge and complicated, and I haven't read this book as much as the other books. Just because for a long time, I didn't have this book. I had this book when I was a child, essentially, and I remember that I would open it and read it, and it's a big book, and I only ever had paperback, and I would lay it flat like this, and I did that on the bed once. My sister and her friends were jumping on the bed, and it fell off and ripped apart, and then I lost 10 pages. And so I was like, I can't read this. I kept it for years, but I couldn't read it because there's a chunk of the book missing. So there's a lot to this book that I just don't remember. There's a lot of pieces to it that I don't remember. So Voldemort has a big plan, and it's confusing and complicated. That's essentially what the Riddle House was about. And then Chapter 3, the invitation. Oh, that's what we're reading today. Chapter 2, the scar. Harry wakes up and his scar's feeling prickly. He remembers he had a dream about Voldemort talking about his plan. And Harry's like, what's that dream? Because this is the first, one of those dreams that he's ever had. At least officially. And his scar's hurting, and he's like, oh no, is Voldemort on Private Drive? And he's kind of freaking out about it. That's essentially what last the week before that was. So now we're going to be reading chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3, The Invitation. Okay. By the time Harry arrived in the kitchen, the 3 Dursleys were already seated around the table. None of them looked up as he entered or sat down. Uncle Vernon's large red face was hidden behind the morning's Daily Mail. Oh, Daily Mail. The Daily Mail, huh? It's a great news article. Great piece of journalism there. And Aunt Petunia was cutting a grapefruit into quarters. Her lips pursed over her horse-like teeth. Dudley looked furious and sulky and somehow seemed to be taking up even more space than usual. This was saying something, as he always took up an entire side of the square table by himself. When Aunt Petunia put a quarter of unsweetened grapefruit onto Dudley's plate with a tremulous, "There you are, Diddy darling," Dudley glowered at her. His life had taken a most unpleasant turn since he had come home for the summer with his end-of-year report. Grapefruit. Anybody like grapefruit in the comments? Grapefruit is one of those dividing things. Grapefruit is a very particular taste. I don't mind grapefruit on occasion. It's not my favorite thing. But I like if it's like a really hot day and you really just want a nice cool piece of fruit, like grapefruit can be good. But I understand if you don't like grapefruit because it's very much an acquired taste. And of all the fruits they chose, I don't know why they chose grapefruit, since Dudley doesn't like fruit of any kind. I feel like they could have done better for him, honestly. Also, I think there's a better way to diet for Dudley. I don't know who their dietitian is, because that's what's going on. Is essentially we're going to read soon that a school counselor or whatever is concerned about Dudley's weight. And so they're going to suggest to the Dursleys that he should go on a diet and whatever. There's better ways to diet. I don't know how much I should be talking about this because I'm not an expert or anything, but I'm not Dudley. And the fact is, like, everybody is different. Everybody diets, everybody's metabolism is different. Everybody's body is different. There's no one way to do a diet or an exercise plan or whatever. But I know that the way they're dieting with Dudley, that usually doesn't work, at least in my experience. To just limit yourself to one piece of fruit for breakfast, no. Usually you want to do food that you like, generally. Even if it has to be healthy, I think it's better to pick healthy food that you actually like. If Dudley's going to have fruit, like, have better fruit, honestly. Like, fruit is fruit, and it's good sugar, it's good carbs, so I feel like they could have done better for him. I have actually lost 8 pounds in the past few months. Since April-ish, I've lost 8 pounds. I've probably gained a pound since, because I haven't really exercised the past week because I was on vacation. But what I do is I carb cycle is what I do, which means I have high carb days and low carb days, which I've already kind of talked about that. You've heard me say something about that one point or another. And that's really helpful because on the days that are low carb, it's easier to get through because it's like, just eat like this today. You get to have better food tomorrow. Like, you get to, like, look forward to the next day. And even on my low carb days, I don't eat food I don't want. Don't eat food you don't want. That's just pointless. Life's too short to eat food you don't like. I don't like vegetables, so I eat vegetables that I do like, which is essentially just lettuce. I have a salad every other day, and it's lettuce, cheese, and a little bit of ranch, and lots of croutons. hey, whatever you have to do to get vegetables in your system, do it. If you have to cover your vegetables in cheese or in ranch or whatever, do it. Your body doesn't know the difference. It's still getting vegetables. It's okay. The point is, do whatever you can do. That's the important thing. And I do the exercise that I like to do. I do the exercise that I like to do. I like to swim, so that's what I do. I swim. I like to run, so that's what I do. And every once in a while, I do the exercise I'm supposed to do. You're supposed to, for me, for my body type, I'm supposed to do fat burn and HIIT. Fat burn just means you're supposed to move in such a way that your heart rate stays at about, for me, about 120. For my age and my weight. And then HIIT, which is high intensity interval training. I hate HIIT workouts. Not because they're hard, but because they're boring to me. Because in order to do HIIT, you have to constantly be aware of the time. And I don't want to be aware of the time. I'd rather be lost in my music going as fast as I want to. Or as slow as I need to, or whatever. So if there is an exercise you need to do that you can't stand, do that every once in a while. But for the most part, do exercise that you want to do. I like to run. According to the experts, running for an hour at high speed or whatever isn't actually helpful. It's not. I don't care. It's fun for me. I know it's not fun for most people, but it's fun for me. I listen to like heavy metal and I'm running and I just feel like I'm in an action movie and it's just really fun. So that's what I do, okay? I do the stuff I'm supposed to do, but I mostly do the stuff that I want to do. And that's honestly the key to it, is doing what you want to do. Do something. Like, you don't have to just eat vegetables all the time, and you don't have to just do HIIT all the time. Do something. If you can go for a walk every day, that is hugely more beneficial than whatever you're doing now. And then, eat vegetables. Find vegetables you do like. Make them palatable for you. Those are my suggestions. Although, I'm not an expert. And this is what's worked for me. I also have a calendar that I like to mark when I follow my diet, when I exercise. I have these fun little stickers that I like to put on each day. It's like, okay, I followed my diet today. I get to put this sticker on today. And I also exercise today, so I get to put a sticker on today as well. And I get to look forward to putting a sticker on for the day. And it's really fun to look at the month and to see all the stickers on there and to see how much I've progressed from the last month. That is also something I would recommend. It is really helpful. Restriction just doesn't work for me, for sure. Yeah, no, it doesn't work for anybody as far as I know. And even if it does for a short time, eventually your body just says, you know what, I quit. And then eventually you just binge eat because it's tired of being restricted. So it's better to just restrict yourself every other day, essentially. I can't do HIIT. HIIT is terrible. I hate it. It's the worst. I guess I should do some freaking squats while I watch this. Don't do what you don't want to do, honestly. It's better to do what you want to do. But you can do that if you want to. But yeah, we're talking about this because Dudley's on a diet, and I think they're doing it wrong. Which, I mean, like, in the next book we find out that Dudley actually, he's not, like, he's been, like, obese for, like, this whole series, but he actually transforms into being more muscly because he gets on the wrestling team, which is great for him. That he found an exercise that he likes to do. He wrestles, and that's great. That's perfect for Dudley. And so I love that. Like, he found something that works for him, and that's what you should do. Find something that you enjoy that works for you. It shouldn't be, diet and exercise shouldn't be that hard. It's supposed to be a little hard, but it's not supposed to be that hard. And you shouldn't have to have a subscription to anything. That's also how I feel. You shouldn't have to pay an expert to help you, unless you're in a special situation. At least my personal philosophy is I shouldn't have to pay for a meal plan. I shouldn't have to pay for a personal trainer. Health should be easy and accessible to everybody, no matter how much money you make. That's just how I feel about it. I can't stand people trying to sell diets and whatever. It's like, no, like, you should be able to go to the grocery store and buy food that's healthy and then make it. Like, you shouldn't have to pay someone else to do it. It really shouldn't. But that's just me. Again, not an expert. Anyway, this is not why we're here. It's supposed to be reading Harry Potter. Okay. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia had managed to find excuses for his bad marks as usual. Aunt Petunia always insisted that Dudley was a very gifted boy whose teachers didn't understand him. She's one of those parents. Oh no. While Uncle Vernon maintained that he didn't want some swarty little Nancy boy for a son anyway. Oh my gosh. Ooh. And Uncle Vernon's one of those dads. They also skated over the accusations of bullying in the report. He's a boisterous little boy, but he wouldn't hurt a fly, right? And Petunia had said tearfully. However, at the bottom of the report, there were a few well-chosen comments from the school nurse that not even Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia could explain away. No matter how much Aunt Petunia wailed that Dudley was big-boned, oh no, that's not the only time we're going to hear the big-boned excuse in this book, and that his poundage was really puppy fat, and that he was a growing boy who needed plenty of food, the fact remained that the school outfitters didn't stock knickerbockers big enough for him anymore. The school nurse had seen what Aunt Petunia's eyes, so sharp when it came to spotting fingerprints on her gleaming walls, and in observing the comings and goings of the neighbors, simply refused to see that far from needing extra nourishment, Dudley had reached roughly the size and weight of a young killer whale. Ooh. So, after many tantrums, after arguments that shook Harry's bedroom floor, and many tears from Aunt Petunia, the new regimen had begun. The diet sheet that had been sent by the smelting school nurse had been taped to the fridge, which had been emptied of all Dudley's favorite things, fizzy drinks and cakes, chocolate bars and burgers, and filled instead with fruit and vegetables and the sorts of things that Uncle Vernon called rabbit food. Yeah. To make Dudley feel better about it all, Aunt Petunia had insisted the whole family follow the diet too, so now passed a grapefruit quarter to Harry. He noticed that it was a lot smaller than Dudley's. Oh, come on. Aunt Petunia seemed to feel that the best way to keep up Dudley's morale was to make sure that he did at least get more to eat than Harry. Oh, that's disgusting. But Aunt Petunia didn't know what was hidden under the loose floorboard upstairs. She had no idea that Harry was not following the diet at all. The moment he had got wind of the fact that he was expected to survive the summer on carrot sticks, Harry had sent Hedwig to his friends with pleas for help, and they had risen to the occasion magnificently. Hedwig had returned from Hermione's house with a large box of stuff full of sugar-free snacks, which is a good alternative. That's a good option. Hermione's parents were dentists. Yes. Hagrid, the Hogwarts gamekeeper, had obliged with a sack full of his own homemade rock cakes, which can be good if made correctly. Harry hadn't touched these. He had too much experience of Hagrid's cooking. Mrs. Weasley, however, had sent the family owl Errol with an enormous fruitcake and assorted meat pies. Oh my goodness. I haven't had a good, genuine meat pie in years. You don't get more British than that, either. Fruitcake and assorted meat pies. Poor Errol, who was elderly and feeble, had needed a full 5 days to recover from the journey. And then on Harry's birthday, which the Dursleys had completely ignored, he had received 4 superb birthday cakes, one each from Ron, Hermione, Hagrid, and Sirius. Harry still had 2 of them left, and so, looking forward to a real breakfast when he got back upstairs, he ate his grapefruit without complaint. Uncle Vernon laid aside his paper with a deep sniff of disapproval and looked down at his own grapefruit quarter. "Is this it?" he said grumpily at Aunt Petunia. Aunt Petunia gave him a severe look and then nodded pointedly at Dudley, who had already finished his own grapefruit quarter and was eyeing Harry's with a very sour look in his piggy little eyes. Uncle Vernon gave a great sigh, which ruffled his large bushy mustache, and picked up his spoon. The doorbell rang. Uncle Vernon heaved himself out of his chair and sat down down the hall. Quick as a flash, while his mother was occupied with the kettle, Dudley stole the rest of Uncle Vernon's grapefruit. At least he seems to be liking it, I guess. Harry heard talking at the door and someone laughing, and Uncle Vernon answering curtly. Then the front door closed, and the sound of ripping paper came from the hall. Aunt Petunia set the teapot down on the table and looked curiously around to see where Uncle Vernon had got to. She didn't have to wait long to find out. After about a minute, he was back. He looked livid. "You," he barked at Harry. "In the living room. Now." Bewildered, wondering what on earth he was supposed to have done this time, Harry got up and followed Uncle Vernon out of the kitchen and into the next room. Uncle Vernon closed the door sharply behind both of them. "So," he said, marching over to the fireplace and turning to face Harry as though he were about to pronounce him under arrest. "So." Harry would have dearly loved to have said, "So what?" but he didn't feel that Uncle Vernon's temper should be tested this early in the morning, especially when it was already under severe strain from lack of food. He therefore settled for looking politely puzzled. "This just arrived," said Uncle Vernon. He brandished a piece of purple writing paper at Harry. "A letter. About you." Harry's confusion increased. Who would be writing to Uncle Vernon about him? Who did he know? Who sent letters by the postman? Uncle Vernon glared at Harry, then looked down at the letter and began to read aloud. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, we have never been introduced, but I am sure you have heard a great deal from Harry about my son, Ron." Nope. Actually, Ron and Vernon have somewhat met. They had a very unpleasant phone call last year. "As Harry might have told you, the final of the Quidditch World Cup takes place this Monday night, and my husband, Arthur, has just managed to get prime tickets through his connections, the Department of Magical Games and Sports. I do hope you will allow us to take Harry to the match, as this really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Britain hasn't hosted the Cup for 30 years, and tickets are extremely hard to come by. We would, of course, be glad to have Harry stay for the remainder of the summer holidays and to see him safely onto the train back to school. It would be best for Harry to send us your answer as quickly as possible in the normal way, because the Muggle postman has never delivered to our house, and I'm not sure he even knows where it is. Hoping to see Harry soon. Yours sincerely, Molly Weasley. P.S. I do hope we've put enough stamps on." Uncle Vernon finished reading, but he put his hand back into his breast pocket and drew out something else. "Look at this," he growled. He held up the envelope in which Mrs. Weasley's letter had come, and Harry had to fight down a laugh. Every bit of it was covered in stamps, except for a square inch on the front, into which Mrs. Weasley had squeezed the Dursleys' address in minute writing. "She did put enough stamps on, then," said Harry, trying to sound as though Mrs. Weasley's was a mistake anyone could make. His uncle's eyes flashed. "The postman noticed," he said through gritted teeth. "Very interested to know where this letter came from, he was. That's why he rang the doorbell. Seemed to think it was funny." Harry didn't say anything. Other people might not understand why Uncle Vernon was making a fuss about too many stamps, but Harry had lived with the Dursleys too long not to know how touchy they were about anything even slightly out of the ordinary. Their worst fear was that someone would find out that they were connected, however distantly, with people like Mrs. Weasley. Uncle Vernon was still glaring at Harry, who tried to keep his expression neutral. If he didn't do or say anything stupid, he might just be in for the treat of a lifetime. He waited for Uncle Vernon to say something, but he merely continued to glare. Harry decided to break the silence. "So, can I go then?" he asked. A slight spasm crossed Uncle Vernon's large purple face. The mustache bristled. Harry thought he knew what was going on behind the mustache. A furious battle as two of Uncle Vernon's most fundamental instincts came into conflict. Allowing Harry to go would make Harry happy, something Uncle Vernon had struggled against for 13 years. On the other hand, allowing Harry to disappear to the Weasleys for the rest of the summer would get rid of him 2 weeks earlier than anyone could have hoped, and Uncle Vernon hated having Harry in the house. To give himself thinking time, it seemed, he looked down at Mrs. Weasley's letter again. "Who is this woman?" he said, staring at the signature with distaste. "You've seen her," said Harry. "She's my friend Ron's mother. She was meeting him at off the school train at the end of last term." He had almost said Hogwarts Express, and that was a sure way to get his uncle's temper up. Nobody ever mentioned the name of Harry's school aloud in the Dursley household. Uncle Vernon screwed up his enormous face as though trying to remember something very unpleasant. Dumpy sort of woman, he growled finally. Load of children with red hair. Well, he's one to talk, throwing names around like that. Harry frowned. He thought it was a bit rich of Uncle Vernon to call anyone dumpy when his own son Dudley had finally achieved what he'd been threatening to do since the age of 3 and become wider than he was tall. Uncle Vernon was perusing the letter again. Quidditch, he muttered under his breath. Quidditch. What is this rubbish? Harry felt the second stab of annoyance. It's a sport, he said shortly. Played on broom. All right, said Uncle Vernon loudly. Harry saw with some satisfaction that his uncle looked vaguely panicky. Apparently his nerves couldn't stand the sound of the word broomsticks in his living room. He took refuge in perusing the letter again. Harry saw his lips form the words, "Send us your answer in the normal way." He scowled. What does she mean, the normal way? He spat. Normal for us, said Harry, and before his uncle could stop him, he added, "You know, owl post. That's normal for wizards." Uncle Vernon looked as outraged as if Harry had just uttered a disgusting swear word. Shaking with anger, he shot a nervous look through the window as though expecting to see some of the neighbors with their ears pressed against the glass. How many times do I have to tell you not to mention that unnaturalness under my roof? He hissed, his face now a rich plum color. You stand there, in the clothes Petunia and I have put on your ungrateful back. Only after Dudley finished with them, said Harry coldly. He's not taking it. No. And indeed he was dressed in a sweatshirt so large for him that he had to roll back the sleeves 5 times so as to be able to use his hands, and which fell past the knees of his extremely baggy jeans. I will not be spoken to like that, said Uncle Vernon, trembling with rage. But Harry wasn't going to stand for this. Gone were the days when he had been forced to take every single one of the Dursleys' stupid rules. He wasn't following Dudley's diet, and he wasn't going to let Uncle Vernon stop him from going to the Quidditch World Cup. Not if he could help it. Harry took a deep, steadying breath and then said, Okay, I can't see the World Cup. Can I go now then? Only I've got a letter Sirius I want to finish. You know, my godfather. He had done it. He had said the magic words. Now he watched the purple recede blotchily from Uncle Vernon's face, making it look like badly mixed black currant ice cream. Huh? Black currant ice cream? What kind of British nonsense is that? Black currant ice cream. That's a thing. Oh, that doesn't look that bad. That actually looks kind of good. See if I can show you. Bloop. Oh, that looks delightful. Oh. I hate that so much. No, that's not what I want. Stop. Okay. Is that a thing you can get here in the States? I feel like I've seen this. What is a currant? Am I pronouncing it right? That looks delightful. It looks really good. Huh. Oh. Interesting. Okay. You're running to him, are you? Said Uncle Vernon in a would-be calm voice, but Harry had seen the pupils of his tiny eyes contract with sudden fear. Well, yeah, said Harry casually. It's been a while since he's heard from me, and you know, if he doesn't, he might stop thinking something's wrong. He stopped there to enjoy the effect of these words. He could almost see the cogs working under Uncle Vernon's thick, dark, neatly parted hair. If he tried to stop Harry writing to Sirius, Sirius would think Harry was being mistreated. If he told Harry he couldn't go to the Quidditch World Cup, Harry would write and tell Sirius, who would know Harry was being mistreated. There was only one thing for Uncle Vernon to do. Harry could see the conclusion forming in his uncle's mind as though the great mustached face were transparent. Harry tried not to smile, to keep his own face as blank as possible. And then... Well, all right then. You can go to this stupid World Cup thing. You write and tell these Weasleys that to pick you up, mind. I haven't got time to go dropping you off all over the country. And you can spend the rest of the summer there. And you could tell your... Oh. And you could tell your godfather. Tell him you're going. Okay. I underlined, you write and tell these Weasleys are there to pick you up, mind. And I wrote in the margin, you'll regret this. Yes, you will, as we'll see in the next chapter. Okay then, said Harry brightly. He turned and walked through the living room door, fighting the urge to jump into the air and whoop. He was going. He was going to the Weasleys, and he was going to watch the Quidditch World Cup. Outside in the hall, he nearly ran into Dudley, who had been lurking behind the door, clearly hoping to overhear Harry being told off. He looked shocked to see the broad grin on Harry's face. That was an excellent breakfast, wasn't it? Said Harry. I feel really full, don't you? Laughing at the astonished look on Dudley's face, Harry took the stairs 3 at a time and hurled himself back into his bedroom. The first thing he saw was that Hedwig was back. She was sitting in her cage, staring at Harry, staring at Harry with her enormous amber eyes and clicking her beak in the way that meant she was annoyed about something. Exactly what was annoying her became apparent almost at once. "Ouch!" said Harry, as what appeared to be a small, gray, feathery tennis ball collided with the side of his head. Harry massaged the spot furiously, looking up to see what had hit him, and saw a minute owl, small enough to fit into the palm of his hand, whizzing excitedly around the room like a loose firework. Harry then realized the owl had dropped a letter at his feet. Harry bent down, recognized Ron's handwriting, and tore open the envelope. Inside was a hastily scribbled note. "Harry, Dad got the tickets. Ireland versus Bulgaria. Monday night. Mom's writing to the Muggles to ask you to stay. They might already have the letter. I don't know how fast Muggle post is. Thought I'd send this with Pig anyway." Harry stared at the word pig, then looked up at the tiny owl now zooming around the light fixture on the ceiling. He had never seen anything that looked less like a pig. Maybe he couldn't read Ron's writing. He went back to the letter. "We're coming for you whether the Muggles like it or not. You can't miss the World Cup. Only Mum and Dad reckon it's better if we pretend to ask their permission first. If they say yes, send Pig back with your answer pronto, and we'll come and get you at 5 o'clock on Sunday. If they say no, send Pig back pronto, and we'll come and get you at 5 o'clock on Sunday anyway. Hermione's arriving this afternoon. Percy started work, the Department of International Magical Corporation. Don't mention anything about abroad while you're here, unless you want the pants bought off you. See you soon, Ron." Pigwidgeon wasn't in the movie, but he was, sort of. And I want to see if I can find him. Pigwidgeon. Yeah. See, he was. He just wasn't, like, in the actual film. But they did have an owl. And everything. I wish there was a better way to look at the picture. Pigwidgeon. Let me see if the wiki can do this for me. Yeah, that's a picture of him. I want, yeah. Yeah. Alright. See? That's him. So they actually did have an owl for the movie. He just wasn't in the movie. But there he is. For whatever reason, Ron let Ginny name his owl. Don't do that. Ginny is terrible at naming things. Just look at her children. No, just kidding. Oh, whoops. I don't hate the names of Harry's kids, except Albus Severus. I think they could have done better. Couldn't Albus Severus be his middle name? And I don't know, what would his first name be? I don't know. They could have done so much better than Albus Severus. Anyway, Lily and James is fine, and it totally makes sense. But anyway, that's unfortunate. And then Ginny names her Pygmy Puff Arnold, which I also think is unfortunate. She's terrible at naming things. She doesn't let her name things. Anyway. All right. Calm down, Harry said as the small owl flew low over his head, twittering madly, with what Harry could only assume was pride at having delivered the letter to the right person. Come here, I need you to take my answer back. The owl fluttered down on top of Hedwig's cage. Hedwig looked coldly up at it, as though daring it to try and come any closer. Harry seized his eagle-feathered quill once more, grabbed a fresh piece of parchment, and wrote, Ron, it's all okay. The muggles say I can come. See you 5 o'clock tomorrow. Can't wait. Harry. He folded this note up very small and with immense difficulty tied it to the tiny owl's leg as it hopped on the spot with excitement. The moment the note was secure, the owl was off again. It zoomed out of the window and out of sight. Harry turned to Hedwig. Feeling up to a long journey? He asked her. Hedwig hooted in a dignified sort of way. Can you take this as serious for me? He said, picking up his letter. Hang on. I just want to finish it. He unfolded the parchment and hastily added a postscript. If you want to contact me, I'll be at my friend Ron Weasley's for the rest of the summer. His dad's got us tickets for the Quidditch World Cup. The letter finished, he tied it to Hedwig's leg. She kept unusually still, as though determined to show him how a real post owl should behave. I'll be at Ron's when you get back, all right? Harry told her. She nipped his finger affectionately, then with a soft swooshing noise, spread her enormous wings and soared out the open window. Harry watched her out of sight, then crawled under his bed, wrenched up the loose floorboard, and pulled out a large chunk of birthday cake. He sat there on the floor eating it, savoring the happiness that was flooding through him. He had cake, and Dudley had nothing but grapefruit. It was a bright summer's day. He would be leaving Privet Drive tomorrow. His scar felt perfectly normal again, and he was going to watch the Quidditch World Cup. It was hard, just now, to feel worried about anything, even Lord Voldemort. Yay! Chapter 3 done. Okay, so we will read Chapter 4, Back to the Burrow, after our 15-minute intermission. During the intermission, please feel free to like the stream or the video, depending on when you're watching this. And if you're not a subscriber, become a subscriber. I want to get to 50 subs. I'm almost there. And turn on the notifications. Turn on your notifications so you can be notified the next time I upload and the next time I go live. I'll probably be going live next week. If you want to know what my schedule is going to be, follow me on Twitter. Link in the description. Also in the description is my Instagram and my TikTok and my Patreon if you'd like to support me for $5 a month. I also have writing on there. I have short stories and essays and poetry and the like written by yours truly. If you become a patron, you can read all of them. Sorry. But if you can't afford that, but you'd still like to read my stuff, there's plenty of free stuff on there for you to enjoy as well. Speaking of which, I will be posting the next story the week after next. I post new content every month. And I post at the first Monday of every month. And for September, I'm going to be posting some Harry Potter fan fiction, which is going to be free for everyone, by the way. Very, very exciting. So check that out. Link in the description. Feel free to talk in the chat or in the comment section. And I will see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back. Okay, so now we're going to read Chapter 4. Nope, we're not that far. Chapter 4, Back to the Burrow. Quite exciting. Yes, yes, yes. It's not too long of a chapter. Chapter 4, Back to the Burrow. By 12 o'clock the next day, Harry's school trunk was packed with his school things and all his most prized possessions. The invisibility cloak he had inherited from his father, the broomstick he had gotten from Sirius, the enchanted map of Hogwarts he had been given by Fred and George Weasley last year. He had emptied his hiding place under the loose floorboard of all food, double-checked every nook and cranny of his bedroom for forgotten spellbooks or quills, and taken down the chart on the wall counting down the days to September the 1st, on which he liked to cross off the days remaining until he returned to Hogwarts. The atmosphere inside number 4 Privet Drive was extremely tense. The imminent arrival at their house of an assortment of wizards was making the Dursleys uptight and irritable. More so than usual, I guess. Uncle Vernon had looked downright alarmed when Harry informed him that the Weasleys would be arriving at 5 o'clock the very next day. "I hope you told them to dress properly, these people," he snarled at once. "I've seen the sort of stuff your lot wear. They'd better have the decency to put on normal clothes, that's all." Yeah, well, we'll see about that. Harry felt a slight sense of foreboding. He had rarely seen Mr. and Mrs. Weasley wearing anything that the Dursleys would call normal. Their children might don Muggle clothing during the holidays, but Mr. and Mrs. Weasley usually wore long robes in varying states of shabbiness. Harry wasn't bothered about what the neighbors would think, but he was anxious about how rude the Dursleys might be to the Weasleys if they turned up looking like their worst idea of wizards. Uncle Vernon had put on his best suit. Oh my gosh. What a pretentious jerk. I can't even. To some people, this might have looked like a gesture of welcome. No. But Harry knew it was because Uncle Vernon wanted to look impressive and intimidating. Dudley, on the other hand, looked somewhat diminished. This was not because the diet was at last taking effect, but due to fright. Dudley had emerged from his last... Oh, Dudley. You should be afraid. Oh no, this is not going to be a fun encounter for you. Dudley had emerged from his last encounter with a fully grown wizard with a curly pig's tail poking out of the seat of his trousers, and Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon had had to pay for its removal at a private hospital in London. It wasn't altogether surprising, therefore, that Dudley kept running his hand nervously over his backside and walking sideways from room to room so as not to present the same target to the enemy. Lunch was an almost silent meal. Dudley didn't even protest at the food, cottage cheese and grated celery. I like me some cottage cheese and grated celery. That sounds good. Maybe I should put that on my next grocery list. But there's no way that's all you're feeding him. He needs protein too. And fat's good too. The right kind of fat isn't bad for you. And Petunia wasn't eating anything at all. Her arms were folded, her lips were pursed, and she seemed to be chewing her tongue, as though biting back the furious diatribe she longed to throw at Harry. I know what the word diatribe means, I think. Diatribe. A forceful and bitter verbal attack against someone or something. Bitter verbal attack is what a diatribe is. Alrighty. They'll be driving, of course, Uncle Vernon barked across the table. Said Harry. He hadn't thought of that. How were the Weasleys going to pick him up? They didn't have a car anymore. The old Ford Anglia they had once owned was currently running wild in the Forbidden Forest at Hogwarts. But Mr. Weasley had borrowed a Ministry of Magic car last year. Possibly he would do the same today? Oh, you wish. You wish that's what he was doing. We're getting a lot of juxtaposition going on here. We have magic versus Muggle, and we have civilized versus uncivilized as well, more or less. we have some prejudice going on too, by the looks of it. That's what I wrote anyway. I think so, said Harry. Uncle Vernon snorted into his mustache. Normally Uncle Vernon would have asked what car Mr. Weasley drove. He tended to judge other men by how big and expensive their cars were. But Harry doubted whether Uncle Vernon would have taken to Mr. Weasley even if he drove a Ferrari. Harry spent most of the afternoon in his bedroom. He couldn't stand watching Aunt Petunia peer out through the net curtains every few seconds, as though there had been a warning about an escaped rhinoceros. That's an interesting image. Imagery? I don't know if that's necessarily imagery. It's more of a simile. Good simile. Yeah. Finally, at 4:45, Harry went back downstairs and into the living room. Aunt Petunia was compulsively straightening cushions. Uncle Vernon was pretending to read the paper, but his tiny eyes were not moving, and Harry was sure he was really listening with all his might for the sound of an approaching car. Dudley was crammed into an armchair, his porky hands beneath him, clamped firmly around his bottom. Harry couldn't take the tension. He left the room and went and sat on the stairs in the hall, his eyes on his watch and his heart pumping fast from excitement and nerves. But 5 o'clock came and then went. Uncle Vernon, perspiring slightly in his suit, opened the front door, peered up and down the street, then withdrew his head quickly. "They're late," he snarled at Harry. "I know," said Harry. "Maybe, the traffic's bad, or something." Not quite. "10 past 5. Then 5:15. Harry was starting to feel anxious himself now. At 5:30, he heard Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia conversing in terse mutters in the living room. "No consideration at all. We might have had an engagement. Maybe they think they'll get invited to dinner if they're late. Well, they most certainly won't be," said Uncle Vernon. And Harry heard him stand up and start pacing the living room. "They'll take the boy and go. There'll be no hanging around. That's if they're coming at all. Probably mistaken the day. I dare say their kind don't set much store by punctuality. Either that, or they drive some tin-pot car that's broken Ah! Harry jumped up. From the other side of the living room door came the sounds of the 3 Dursleys scrambling, panic-stricken, across the room. Next moment Dudley came flying into the hall, looking terrified. "What happened?" said Harry. "What's the matter?" But Dudley didn't seem able to speak. Hands still clamped over his buttocks, he waddled as fast as he could into the kitchen. Harry hurried into the living room. Loud bangings and scrapings were coming from behind the Dursleys' boarded-up fireplace, which had a fake coal fire plugged in front of it. "What is this?" gasped Aunt Petunia, who had backed into the wall and was staring terrified toward the fire. "What is it, Vernon?" But they were left in doubt barely a second later. Voices could be heard from inside the blocked fireplace. "Ouch! Fred, no! Go back! Go back! There's been some kind of mistake! Tell George not to... Ow! George, no! There's no room! Go back quickly and tell Ron!" "Maybe Harry can hear us. Dad, maybe he'll be able to let us out." There was a loud hammering of fists on the boards behind the electric fire. Harry, can you hear us?" The Dursleys rounded on Harry like a pair of angry wolverines. "What is this?" growled Uncle Vernon. "What's going on?" They've tried to get here by flue powder," said Harry, fighting a mad desire to laugh. "They can travel by fire. Only you've blocked the fireplace. Hang on." He approached the fireplace and called through the boards. "Mr. Weasley, can you hear me?" The hammering stopped. Somebody inside the chimney-piece said, "Shh! Mr. Weasley, it's Harry. The fireplace has been blocked up. You won't be able to get through there." "Damn!" said Mr. Weasley's voice. "What on earth did they want to block up the fireplace for?" "They've got an electric fire," Harry explained. My parents do too. I think a lot of people do. You want the look of a fireplace without the upkeep of a fireplace. Really? Said Mr. Weasley's voice excitedly. Eclectic, you say? With a plug? Gracious, I must see that. Let's think. Ouch! Ron! Ron's voice now joined the others. What are we doing here? Has something gone wrong? Oh, no, Ron, came Fred's voice, very sarcastically. No, this is exactly where we wanted to end up. Yeah, we're having the time of our lives here, said George, whose voice sounded muffled as though he was squashed against the wall. Boys, said Mr. Weasley vaguely. I'm trying to think what to do. Yes, only way. Stand back, Harry. Harry retreated to the sofa. Uncle Vernon, however, moved forward. Wait a moment, he bellowed at the fire. What exactly are you going to... Bang! The electric fire shot across the room at the boarded-up fireplace, and as the boarded-up fireplace burst outward, expelling Mr. Weasley, Fred, George, and Ron in a cloud of rubble and loose chippings. Aunt Petunia shrieked and fell backward over the coffee table. Uncle Vernon caught her before she hit the floor, and gaped, speechless, as the Weasleys, all of whom had bright red hair, including Fred and George, who were identical to the last freckle. That's better, panted Mr. Weasley, brushing dust from his long green robes and straightening his glasses. Ah, you must be Harry's aunt and uncle. You really need to fix the fireplace. Just fix everything up. Just make this place better before you address them. Tall, thin, and balding, he moved toward Uncle Vernon, his hand outstretched, but Uncle Vernon backed away several paces, dragging Aunt Petunia. Words utterly failed Uncle Vernon. His best suit was covered in white dust, which had settled in his hair and mustache and made him look as though he had just aged 30 years. Yes, sorry about that, said Mr. Weasley, lowering his hand and looking over his shoulder at the blasted fireplace. It's all my fault. It just didn't occur to me that we wouldn't be able to get out at the other end. I had your fireplace connected to the Flu network, you see. Just for an afternoon, you know, so we could get Harry. Muggle fireplaces aren't supposed to be connected, strictly speaking. But I've got a useful contact at the Flu regulation panel, and he fixed it for me. I can put it right in a jiffy, though. Don't worry. I'll light a fire to send the boys back, and then I can repair your fireplace before I disapparate. Harry was ready to bet that the Dursleys hadn't understood a single word of this. They were still gaping at Mr. Weasley, thunderstruck. Aunt Petunia staggered upright again and hid behind Uncle Vernon. Hello, Harry, said said Mr. Weasley, brightly. Got your trunk ready? It's upstairs, said Harry, grinning back. We'll get it, said Fred at once. Winking at Harry, he and George left the room. They knew where Harry's bedroom was, having once rescued him from it in the dead of night. Harry suspected that Fred and George were hoping for a glimpse of Dudley. They had heard a lot about him from Harry. Well, said Mr. Weasley, swinging his arm slightly while he tried to find words to break the very nasty silence. Very nice place you've got here. As the usual spotless living room was now covered in dust and bits of brick, this remark didn't go down too well with the Dursleys. Uncle Vernon's face purpled once more, and Aunt Petunia started chewing her tongue again. However, they seemed too scared to actually say anything. Mr. Weasley was looking around. He loved everything to do with Muggles. Harry could see him itching to go and examine the television and the video recorder. Video recorder? They run off electricity, do they? He said knowledgeably. Ah, yes, I can see the plugs. I collect plugs, he added to Uncle Vernon. And batteries. Got a very large collection of batteries. My wife thinks I'm mad, but there you are. Uncle Vernon clearly thought Mr. Weasley was mad, too. He moved ever so slightly to the right, screening Aunt Petunia from view, as though he thought Mr. Weasley might suddenly run at them and attack. Dudley suddenly reappeared in the room. Harry could hear the clunk of his trunk on the stairs, and knew that the sounds had scared Dudley out of the kitchen. Dudley edged along the wall, gazing at Mr. Weasley with terrified eyes, and attempted to conceal himself behind his mother and father. Unfortunately, Uncle Vernon's bulk, while sufficient to hide bony Aunt Petunia, was nowhere near enough to conceal Dudley. Ah, this is your cousin, is it, Harry? Said Mr. Weasley, taking another brave stab at making conversation. Yep, said Harry. That's Dudley. Harry's not bothered by this at all. He and Ron exchanged glances and then quickly looked away from each other. The temptation to burst out laughing was almost overwhelming. Dudley was still clutching his bottom as though afraid it might fall off. Mr. Weasley, however, seemed genuinely concerned at Dudley's peculiar behavior. Indeed, from the tone of his voice when he next spoke, Harry was quite sure that Mr. Weasley thought Dudley was quite as mad as the Dursleys thought he was, except that Mr. Weasley felt sympathy rather than fear. "Having a good holiday, Dudley," he said kindly. Dudley whimpered. Harry saw his hands tighten still harder over his massive backside. Fred and George came back into the room carrying Harry's school trunk. They glanced around as they entered and spotted Dudley, their faces cracked into identical evil grins. "All right," said Mr. Weasley. "Better get cracking, then." He pushed up the sleeves of his robes and took out his wand. Harry saw the Dursleys draw back against the wall as one. "Incendio," said Mr. Weasley, pointing his wand at the hole in the wall behind him. Flames rose at once in the fireplace, crackling merrily as though they had been burning for hours. Mr. Weasley took a small drawstring bag from his pocket, untied it, and took a pinch of the powder inside and threw it into the flames, which turned emerald green and roared higher than ever. "Off you go then, Fred," said Mr. Weasley. "Coming," said Fred. "Oh, no, hang on." A bag of sweets had spilled out of Fred's pocket, and the contents were now rolling in every direction. Big, fat toffees in brightly colored wrappers. Fred scrambled around, grabbing them back into his pocket, then gave the Dursleys a cheery wave, stepped forward, and walked right into the fire, saying, "The Burrow!" And Petunia gave a little shuddering gasp. There was a whooshing sound, and Fred vanished. "Right then, George," said Mr. Weasley. "You in the trunk." Harry helped George carry the trunk forward into the flames and turn it onto its end so that he could hold it better. Then, with a second whoosh, George had cried, "The Burrow!" and vanished too. "Ron, you next," said Mr. Weasley. "See you," said Ron brightly to the Dursleys. He grinned broadly at Harry, then stepped into the fire, shouted, "The Burrow!" and disappeared. Now Harry and Mr. Weasley alone remained. "Well, bye then," Harry said to the Dursleys. They didn't say anything at all. Harry moved toward the fire, but just as he reached the edge of the hearth, Mr. Weasley put out a hand and held him back. He was looking at the Dursleys in amazement. "Harry said goodbye to you," he said. "Didn't you hear him?" "It doesn't matter," Harry muttered to Mr. Weasley. "Honestly, I don't care." Mr. Weasley did not remove his hand from Harry's shoulder. "You aren't going to see your nephew till next summer," he said to Uncle Vernon in mild indignation. "Surely you're going to say goodbye." Uncle Vernon's face worked furiously. The idea of being taught consideration by a man who had just blasted away half his living room wall seemed to be causing him intense suffering. But Mr. Weasley's wand was still in his hand, and Uncle Vernon's tiny eyes darted to it once before he said, very resentfully, "Goodbye, then." "See you," said Harry, putting one foot forward into the green flames, which felt pleasantly like warm breath. At that moment, however, a horrible gagging sound erupted behind him, and Aunt Petunia started to scream. Harry wheeled around. Dudley was no longer standing behind his parents. He was kneeling beside the coffee table, and he was gagging and sputtering on a foot-long purple, slimy thing that was protruding from his mouth. One bewildered second later, Harry realized that the foot-long thing was Dudley's tongue, and that a brightly colored toffee wrapper lay on the floor before him. Aunt Petunia hurled herself onto the ground beside Dudley, seized the end of his swollen tongue, and attempted to wrench it out of his mouth. Unsurprisingly, Dudley yelled and sputtered worse than ever, trying to fight her off. Uncle Vernon was bellowing and waving his arms around, and Mr. Weasley had to shout to make himself heard. "Not to worry, I can sort him out," he yelled, advancing on Dudley with his wand outstretched. But Aunt Petunia screamed worse than ever and threw herself on top of Dudley, shielding him from Mr. Weasley. "No, really," said Mr. Weasley desperately. "It's a simple process. It was the toffee. My son Fred, a real practical joker, but it's only an engorgement charm. At least I think it is. Please, I can correct it." But far from being reassured, the Dursleys became more panic-stricken. Aunt Petunia was sobbing hysterically, tugging Dudley's tongue as though desperate to rip it out. Dudley appeared to be suffocating under the combined pressure of his mother and his tongue, and Uncle Vernon, who had lost control completely, seized a china figure from on top of the sideboard and threw it very hard at Mr. Weasley, who ducked, causing the ornament to shatter in the blasted fireplace. He's resorted to throwing things. Now, really, said Mr. Weasley angrily, brandishing his wand. I'm trying to help. Bellowing like a wounded hippo, Uncle Vernon snatched up another ornament. Harry, go. Just go, Mr. Weasley shouted, his wand on Uncle Vernon. I'll sort this out. Harry didn't want to miss the fun, but Uncle Vernon's second ornament narrowly missed his left ear, and on balance he thought it best to leave the situation to Mr. Weasley. He stepped into the fire, looking over his shoulder as he said, The Burrow! His last fleeting glimpse of the living room was of Mr. Weasley blasting a third ornament out of Uncle Vernon's hand with his wand, Aunt Petunia screaming and lying on top of Dudley, and Dudley's tongue lolling around like a great slimy python. But next moment, Harry had begun to spin very fast, and the Dursleys' living room was whipped out of sight in a rush of emerald green flames. Very interesting indeed. But that is the end of Chapter 4. A pretty quick chapter. Next week, we're going to read Chapter 5, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, which I don't remember what happens in that chapter. I know we meet the last two Weasleys that we have not met yet. Or did we meet Charlie in the first one? I don't think Charlie came. I think it was Charlie's co-workers that came to pick up the dragon. I don't think we actually met Charlie. We meet Charlie and Bill for the first time. I forget what else happens in that chapter. And then Chapter 6, The Portkey. So we'll be on our way to the Quidditch World Cup. So exciting. Okay. But that is the end of the stream for this evening. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please continue to talk in the comment section. I read those. I get a few comments, so it's easy for me to read them. Please leave a like on the stream. It's very, very helpful. Just click the like button right below the video. If you're not subscribed, become a subscriber and click the subscribe button and turn on notifications with the bell next to the subscribe button. You'll be notified when I upload and when I go live. I will be going live next week. And if you want to know what my schedule is going to be, follow me on Twitter, link in the description. Also, the description is my Instagram and my TikTok and my Patreon. If you'd like to support me, you can become a patron on Patreon for $5 a month. I also am a writer, and so I post writing on there, short stories and essays and what have you. And if you'd like to read those, become a patron. But I also have free stuff on there as well, so if you can't become a patron but still would like to read my stuff, check it out anyway. Plenty of free stuff for you to enjoy. I will be posting some Harry Potter fan fiction in a couple weeks, and that will be free for everyone, so check that out soon. And I believe that is it. So, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical evening. Bye-bye!